Hello, and welcome to the GSMC College Football Podcast presented to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Jake Daly. We're going to have a great show for you today. We're going to go over Jimmy Pruitt and his lawsuit against the NCAA and the University of Tennessee. And we're also going to talk about Deion Sanders and his new contract extension that just came out this afternoon, on Friday, March 28th. Those are going to be our two big talking points today. But before we start, I'd like to ask that you like and follow the show. Also, we get a number of questions from viewers that come in during the show. So to ensure that your question gets read on the air, I ask that you use the tips and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net. With your questions, this puts your question at the top of the list so that I see it, and it also just really helps the show. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. All right, so let's get into one of the big news stories of today. Jimmy Pruitt is suing the NCAA and the University of Tennessee for the amount of $100 million. This stems from his firing as Tennessee's head coach in 2021 of their collegiate football program. And this lawsuit had a lot to it. So I just want to kind of go over some of the points that were in the lawsuit that I saw earlier, and just kind of what it's going to be about. So Jeremy Pruitt, he got fired from Tennessee, did not have a great performance at that program. They did not perform or live up to expectations there. So he was fired for cause. And then a couple months later, Tennessee opened an internal investigation into his practices in recruiting, and just kind of how he was operating the football program. And they found a lot that was wrong there at Tennessee. Some of the penalties that came out of this investigation were Tennessee, the football program, was placed on 5 years of probation by the NCAA in 2023. The football program was docked 28 scholarships. However, they did avoid a bowl ban, which is why they were able to compete in the college football playoff this year. The university was also levied a fine of around $9 million just for their role in all of this. And also the Tennessee football program, they committed 18 level 1 violations. That's the highest level of violation that you can get in the NCAA under their disciplinary system. They committed 18. And also, besides that, just more than 200 individual violations just during Jeremy Pruitt's tenure of 3 years at Tennessee. There was also $60,000 in impermissible benefits found in the violations, and they also found that both Jeremy Pruitt and his wife Casey would make cash payments to recruits, to their families, kind of under the radar. It wasn't technically legal. It was kind of right around the time NIL starting to be talked about as a topic, but it was still against the rules of the NCAA. And additionally, Tennessee had to vacate all wins in which 16 or more of those sanctioned players who benefited from these illegal recruiting violations, if they had to vacate all wins if there were 16 or more sanctioned players at any time during Jeremy Pruitt's 3 seasons at Tennessee. That's a lot. So Jeremy Pruitt is kind of fighting back against this right now. So in his lawsuit, he alleged that Tennessee was paying players before he arrived in 2017, and that he also told then athletic director Philip Fulmer of these violations, who then said that he would, quote, handle it. This kind of stems just from what Jeremy Pruitt's issues were with Tennessee, and this went on for a couple years now. So in 2021, there was an attorney that was representing Jeremy Pruitt, and at the time, he had threatened a lawsuit against Tennessee and against the NCAA, saying that this lawsuit had, tons of evidence that they were colluding in this investigation into Jeremy Pruitt. They obviously did not end up filing a lawsuit later that year in 2021. A big issue here with Jimmy Pruitt, his firing, was he did not get his buyout. Tennessee was found to have fired him with cause, which then they were able to get out of his buyout, which was about $12.5 million. So not a bad chunk of change there. I think that's probably a big reason for this here is he did not get that severance package that he was promised from Tennessee. And he himself got sanctions too from the NCAA because of these incidents. He was sentenced to a 6-year show cause penalty, including a year-long suspension from coaching in games and recruiting off of campus if he were to return to the college coaching ranks. Now, Jimmy Pruitt is not currently coaching in college. He's currently helping his father out at his alma mater, his high school in Alabama. But Jeremy Pruitt was adamant in this lawsuit and these claims that Tennessee was involved in this NCAA sanctions and this investigation. He believes that they were working together as one to try to make Tennessee look as good as possible in the light of all these things that have come out. He also alleged that the Tennessee University chancellor, when they met and when the chancellor was giving him the intent of firing Jeremy Pruitt, he alleged that the chancellor told him at that time that he had done nothing wrong himself. So this is kind of where they're basing that interest in, is that, Jeremy Pruitt thinks that the chancellor says he's got his back, you're not in any trouble. And then they go ahead and launch this whole internal investigation into him and lay the hammer down on him and Tennessee in general. You don't really hear a lot about these sanctions from Tennessee anymore. I remember they came out a couple years ago. They were a pretty big deal for a couple months, maybe a year, and then it's kind of been swept under the rug, especially with Josh Heupel's success in Knoxville the past couple years. That season with Hendon Hooker where they upset Alabama, this past year making the college football playoff, and just generally trending upwards as a football program. I think that's kind of swept these violations and allegations a little bit under the rug. And Jeremy Pruitt thinks that he's being scapegoated here. He claimed that the NCAA and Tennessee had almost formed a tribunal of sorts. That was the word I saw in one of the articles, I believe from ESPN by Chris Lowe. And he claimed that tribunal was established for 3 reasons. 1, for Jeremy Pruitt himself to take the blame about these whole violations. 2, for the University of Tennessee to be commended on their role. And 3, for having the school avoid paying Jeremy Pruitt his buyout, to have kind of a reason, have a cover to get out of paying that buyout to Jeremy Pruitt. Parts of it make sense. I can see where Jeremy Pruitt's coming from, in a sense, just, frustrated with how his tenure went at Tennessee, not getting that buyout money that he was promised, especially as he was fired still while he was under contract there. And I think the other interesting thing too was his lawyer and the lawsuit really pointed out that there was this happening at Tennessee before. The lawsuit claims that the investigation was intentionally limited to just Jeremy Pruitt's time right around there, to kind of avoid historical examinations of the Tennessee sports programs and what they've done over the past 15, 20 years. He name-dropped coaches like the current men's basketball head coach, Rick Barnes, as well as former head coach Philip Fulmer, who was also the athletic director there. He name-dropped both of them as culprits, essentially, in kind of committing these violations and making them, kind of look to the side. One way, you look one way, and something goes the other way. That's what Jeremy Pruitt's trying to say was happening at Tennessee. That was, I think, a big part of kind of this lawsuit and why they're trying to go at the NCAA and the University of Tennessee. And it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. I'm not sure if the NCAA is going to try to go for a settlement here, maybe try to give Pruitt his buyout money and make this go away, or if this is going to drag on. It's very possible, too, that the NCAA and Tennessee are going to try to fight this lawsuit, try to combat it, to try to come out of this looking as best as possible. So we're going to just have to wait and see on kind of what's going on with Jimmy Pruitt here in Tennessee. But for the in the near term, Tennessee's in a solid spot as a program. Josh Heupel's been there for 3 or 4 years now. After Pruitt, he has a solid command of that Tennessee program. I don't really believe this is going to affect any of the guys in the program now. I think it's probably more going to be a university issue / a NCAA issue. But we're just going to have to wait and see kind of how it shakes out in this one. And you never know. They could try to settle, or Jeremy Pruitt could try to take this to the end, and as could the NCAA and Tennessee. So right now, we are going to take our first break of the show, and when we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about Deion Sanders' contract and kind of what that means for Colorado and the future for them. So we'll be back in 1 minute here.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. And before we get started on our next segment, I just want to again remind everyone, if you've got a question during the show, we want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy and your insights, whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share. Don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Use the super chat feature. Just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also just a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content that you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking, hit that super chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and as exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can also go to gsmcsport.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you here as a part of our community. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the contract extension that was just announced earlier this afternoon, a few hours ago, where Deion Sanders will be staying in Boulder for another 4 or 5 years. So they've given him a new extension. It's a new 5-year, $54 million deal to stay in Boulder, Colorado. He did have $18.3 million left on his original deal. He was in the 3rd year of his original deal. This is going to replace that contract. And he only made $5.7 million in guaranteed money last year. Doesn't sound like a bad chunk of change, but for high caliber college head coaches, the going rate's double digits, in the millions, at least 10. And this is what he's going to get. So the actual breakdown looks like this. In 2025, Deion will make a guaranteed base salary of $10 million, as well as in 2026. So both those years, he's making $10 million guaranteed base salary. That's going to bump up to $11 million in 2027. It'll stay at $11 million in 2028, and then it'll hike up to $12 million in 2029. I think the one interesting thing here is the buyout numbers too. I just want to go over those really quickly. If Deion Sanders is bought out before the end of this year, December 31st, 2025, it'll be a $12 million buyout. If it's before December 2026, it drops to $10 million. After that, 2027, the end of that year, it drops to $6 million. The year after that, in 2028, it drops to $4 million. And then the final year of that deal, it's a $3 million buyout for Deion Sanders, for him to leave Boulder, Colorado. Those are really low buyout numbers for a really high caliber head coach. And that's kind of the interesting thing here in this contract. And it kind of makes you wonder if Deion really will stay around for the long haul. Obviously, just signed this deal, committing for the long-term future. They do have him locked up under contract. But those buyout numbers, they're interesting. They're not super big. And, I just talked about Jimmy Pruitt at Tennessee. His buyout was $12.5 million. If you look at Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M had to pay, I believe, around $75 million just to get Jimbo Fisher to leave Texas A&M. So when you're looking at those numbers and comparing them to Deion's contract, the buyout numbers really are not big values. His buyout, that's the highest amount, is still lower than that Jeremy Pruitt $12.5 million amount. So that's kind of interesting, and it kind of makes you wonder, is Deion really truly going to stay long-term in Boulder? I think there's a lot of aspects and angles to this. The one thing that I'm really curious to see about this year is how will Deion do without either of his sons on his roster? Both Shiloh and Shedeur Sanders are gone. They're going to the NFL. Shedeur, obviously, projected first-round pick. Most people have him in the top 5 or 10, but his range is kind of varied depending on who you ask. Shiloh also on the NFL radar, probably going to be a later-round pick, but still probably will get drafted this year. Those are his two boys. How is Deion going to handle not having his sons in the locker room? It's obviously a different dynamic there. Clearly he was very close with both of them. He had his pregame ritual where he'd walk with both of them on the sidelines before the game started. And they're both not going to be there anymore. So I wonder kind of how Deion is going to operate his program without those two there as support, as obviously his sons who he loves so much. But it's just going to be interesting to kind of see how that shakes out. They're also, besides those two, they're losing some really major contributors to that program. Jimmy Horn Jr., who doesn't get a lot of name recognition, was a phenomenal slot receiver for Colorado this year, made a lot of big plays for them. And then obviously the big name, Travis Hunter, Heisman Trophy winner, two-way player, which hasn't really been seen in the likes of football in a long time, especially at the level that Travis Hunter plays at. That's a huge loss for your program. I mean, that's a top 5 talent in the NFL draft this year. It's a guy that can play two positions at an elite level, especially two positions that are key in the NFL today. Wide receiver, cornerback are some of your key positions that you're going to look at. Difference makers. You want guys on your roster at those two positions. And he can play both of them. And it's really interesting that, teams are kind of debating, is he going to be a cornerback? Is he going to be a wide receiver? That's how good he is on both sides of the ball. That's a huge loss for Colorado. So how are they going to go and try to replace that production from not only Shedeur Sanders, but also Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn? Those are big losses on the offensive side of the ball. However, I will commend Deion. He has put a phenomenal staff around him at Colorado. Pat Shermer's still there as the offensive coordinator, obviously has NFL head coaching experience, a great leadership guy, experienced guy, a level-headed coach there that knows what's going on and kind of how to operate, tighter game management issues and things like that. And that's a guy that can help Deion progress even more as a head coach. Obviously, he's shown tremendous promise as a head coach in his years at Jackson State and what he's done with Colorado so far. I mean, Colorado was the worst Big 12 team before Deion Sanders got there. And within 2 years, they finished 9-4 last year, which is a great season. I'm just curious as to if they can keep that up. Can they keep that upward trajectory going at Colorado? It's going to be tough for him. And when circling back to Shedeur, the quarterback competition in Colorado is going to be really, really intriguing. You have more of a veteran guy coming in from Liberty, Caden Salter, who had a phenomenal 2023 season, kind of fell off last year in 2024. Was that because of just the quality of Liberty team? Was that his own personal play kind of just falling off? It kind of remains to be seen on how that's going to shake out with Caden Salter, but it's clear that he has the talent to be a really solid starting quarterback for Colorado. But then you also have the young buck. You got Juju Lewis, 4-star, 5-star quarterback, depending on what rankings you look at, but the kid can play. And this was a huge pickup for Colorado. Flipped him from, I believe, USC. I'd have to double check on that, but flipped him late in the cycle this year. This kid's got a lot of talent, a lot of promise. I think what's probably going to be most likely is going to happen is Caden Salter will most likely start the year at Colorado. I think if he plays well, or if he plays decent enough in the first month of the season, he's going to keep that job the rest of the year. But I wouldn't be surprised if he struggles at all, or if Juju Lewis looks better, if Deion goes with Juju and lets the young kid go. He's going to make mistakes as a freshman, but the talent there and the possible experience to be gained from going through that starting experience as a freshman could be really beneficial to him. And I think you could also see if Caden Salter does end up starting and he struggles in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, I think you're going to start hearing more and more clamoring for Julian Lewis to get on the playing field to see what he can do at Colorado. I think the other thing that's kind of interesting about this contract, talking about buyouts, is just the NFL interest around Deion Sanders as well. Obviously, he had conversations with Jerry Jones this offseason. We're not really sure how far those went or kind of what was said, if there was actually a job ever offered. But it's clear that there's going to be NFL interest and NFL intrigue around Deion Sanders if he keeps performing at this level. If he keeps that upward trajectory up, I think you're going to hear a lot more calls for Deion to go to the NFL, especially if for some reason, depending on where Shedeur goes, if he gets drafted by a front office and a coaching staff that is out in another year or two. I think that's going to be a really interesting point of topic is, will Deion go and try to go coach his son again in the NFL? And those buyout numbers make that really easy to do. Or even another college program that's a little more high caliber, high profile. He's going to have the option, I think, at some point. And I think that's kind of what these buyout numbers are telling us and predicting for us. So it's going to be interesting. Deion Sanders still going to be around in Boulder for a couple years. Will he play this into a new contract with somebody else? Will he start to really build something at Colorado? It still remains to be seen. but we're going to find out soon. And, we're just along for the ride. Obviously, Deion Sanders, showtime. It's the Deion Sanders show. It has been. And, Deion Sanders loves Deion Sanders. But that doesn't take away from his coaching ability. That doesn't take away from who he is as a person to be able to motivate these young guys and kind of try to get them on the right path and that program on the right path. So we're going to end up just kind of having to wait and see on how Colorado is going to do, how their changes in personnel are going to affect them, and just what's going to happen with them this upcoming season. And with that said, we are going to close out our show for today. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC College Football Podcast presented to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and more updates. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to